Today we've got Mike Almquist from Me Without You, and you might be wondering, like, wait, Me Without You, Mike Almquist? There's only one Mike in the band, and it's not Mike Almquist. No, Mike Almquist might be the Me with like the. You might not know him as the face of Me Without You, but like the person behind Me Without You that made all things happen. I think in a lot of ways.
He plays the cash register, I hear.
That's right. The all important cash register. Mike, for those that don't know, you were the manager for Me Without You for many, many years. And in a lot of ways, I don't know exactly like every band's relationship with their manager, but it also did feel like for you in particular, like you were truly a part of the band. Obviously not as a musician, but really truly a part of the band. So obviously we want to talk about just your whole story of being a manager, being in Me Without You, and obviously like where Me Without You is at now with like post breakup stuff. But with all of that said, we'll get into all of that. But before all that, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It was a really, really busy day, and so I don't have to put my kids to bed. And so my wife was like, I gotta do an interview on a podcast. So can you put the kids to bed? It's like,
jeez, it sounds like you need to do more podcast interviews.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's
to get out of that, man.
You're probably there you go. Can we do this 5 times a week?
Did you tell her did you tell her the podcast started an hour ago?
Yeah, I've just been down here in my basement by myself, just staring at a wall.
You do seem very chipper considering the fact that a week ago or a couple weeks ago, the Eagles had a devastating loss, or just over a week and a half ago now, had a very devastating loss. In fact, we were supposed to record that night, and then you realized, wait, the Eagles are actually playing, and so we had to reschedule. And I was like, they're gonna lose. Like, why do you really want to watch your team being embarrassed on national television?
Well, listen,
but no, you really wanted to see it, and here you are now.
Well, listen, we technically, Mason, are not allowed to discuss or disseminate any of the game without the express written consent of the National Football League. So,
well, a good thing it was basically a high school team.
But the team from Philadelphia, see how I'm working around this. The team from Philadelphia, it was an epic disappointment in the back half of this season. And I have to watch every miserable snap. I just have to.
No, I get
it's
that.
My team.
Yeah.
It's like a part of my soul. And so like win or lose and like epic defeat crumbling before my very eyes on, primetime television. There's like 8 Monday night games. I was like, I gotta watch them all.
You're talking to the crowd here. I am the choir in this situation. I'm a Vikings fan, man.
Oh God.
Like,
yeah.
Like that's pretty much our entire history. Mason over here is a bandwagoner. He loves the 49ers. So
believe me, we talked about it, and that's my least.
I didn't wear a Kevin Barlow jersey in 2001 to be considered a bandwagon 49ers fan.
Yeah.
I didn't go through all those early Alex Smith years to be called a bandwagon fan. So, yeah. All right, Mike. Yeah. Let's talk about how you got just involved in music in general. So before like Me Without You stuff, I'd love to hear just kind of like what that story was around you getting involved in music.
Well, pre Me Without You, I just liked music. I was like anybody else, right? I liked fast, heavy music, energetic music, ska and punk in particular.
Oh yeah.
And I think I just always had. I also had sort of a little bit of an artistic stroke. Like I liked to draw as a kid, and I liked to sort of engineer and build stuff. And I went to art school in college, and I think in that time, like I had friends that were in bands, and I always kind of like inserted myself like creatively, in terms of like what their how their songs should sound, or what their album art should look like, and how they should dress, or where they should play, and who they should play with. And I wasn't like their manager, but I was like their like friend, and just like consulting, but not being asked. It's unsolicited advice, right, more or less. And so I always had this like streak in me where I was like, I wanted to like take like a musician's work and just make it better, or give it the context that I thought was like really interesting. And so I did that. My brother's a musician, and I would do that with his bands. and his different projects. And I don't know, it just was always something that I did. And then I found myself in the situation in 2005 or 6, I can't remember exactly, 6, where I became friends with the guys in mewithoutYou just through like, mutual friends and acquaintances and whatever it was. And they were my favorite
Were
band.
you a Philly guy then too?
Yeah. I've lived in Philly since 2002, August 31st,
Okay.
2002. So,
Wow, very specific.
Yeah, well, that was the day I moved, the first day of college. Like that's how I moved.
Okay.
Did you go to Eastern or where did you go to
No,
college?
I went to UArts. I have a bachelor's in fine arts from the University of Arts in Philly.
Nice.
So, and I kept giving unsolicited advice even to even my friends in mewithoutYou, who were my favorite band at the time, and unbeknownst to them, I kind of kept that a little closeted. And they were my favorite band. I was giving unsolicited advice on demos from Brother Sister, and one of the ones was the Spider song, which was this big like 4-minute song of just like Aaron on an acoustic. And I had the idea to kind of, it was like, hey, you should take this song, and you should split each verse up and then like sprinkle it throughout the record as like little vignettes to kind of call back to, like keep like a little narrative. And they were into that idea, and they brought it to their producer, and their producer thought it was a really good idea. They brought it to Brad Wood. He thought it was a cool idea. And then that's how the record came. So I feel like that was kind of like how I sort of ingratiated myself. Like I had a good idea early on, unsolicited, and my opinion became valuable. I wasn't managing them at the time. I wasn't even working with them at the time. It was just.
Would you suggest this for other people too? Just to go like give unsolicited advice to people that are like promising musicians that you think are going to go somewhere?
I don't know.
So that they can make a lot of money?
I think that earlier in my life, I thought that if I just gave, like if I had like a really big opinion, or I could find something that was critical of something, or that was constructively critical, that would, again, to use the word, ingratiate myself to that person. They would think, oh, this person is not just patting me on the back. They're not just a yes man. They actually care about the work. And I think, what's the guy from Amberlin? What's his name? Stephen Christian. Stephen Christian,
yeah.
I went up to him at a show and told him I thought his album was really good. The songs were awesome, but that it was overproduced. It's like, what? Who doesn't know me? What is this guy like? Why is that a valuable opinion from a stranger? Like, he kind of like shot me like a weird look, and so there's like times like that when I was just like, oh, this is what you do. You have something positive and you have something sort of negative, or suggest a way that it can be better. That's not the way to do things.
So it's like a compliment sandwich.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's like almost like a backhand. It's a backhanded compliment, is what it is.
You're just like Gordon Ramsay of the Christian music world.
Yeah, I mean, the people
Shite.
The people who are most interesting on those.
Fuck me.
Yeah, the people that are most interesting on those kinds of shows are the ones that like give it straight. Like Simon Cowell was the best part of American Idol.
That's right.
Now it's America's Got Talent, and
American Idol.
No, but now he's on America's. I don't follow.
Oh
now
yeah, I think
he
so.
was
Yeah.
American Idol, and now he's on America's Got Talent. Yeah. Anyway, the same thing with like Len Goodman on Dancing with the Stars. Like the guys who were just like everyone watched the performance, and it was great. It was really good, especially in Dancing with the Stars. Like only half the duet is like professional, and so everyone's like giving a lot of grace, but then like the guy comes in who's like, no, I'm old school. Like I'm trained in the fundamentals of this thing. Like, and like, you didn't quite hit this, and there was that and this, that, and everyone boos him, but he's the guy who makes everyone like better. Like he holds everyone to a higher standard. And so I like those kinds of people, and I like pushing things to having a higher standard, but like you have to have relationships first. Before
that's a big part of it.
At a merch table and think that you're going to be the cool guy because you told a songwriter that you thought that there was too much production on his debut record.
Right. Do you?
That reminds me of this story that I have to share.
Please.
I was invited over to a friend's house through a mutual friend. So I'm hanging out with our mutual friend, And I know this guy kind of peripherally, not really, never talked to him, but like I know of him, right? He's a bassist in a very influential jazz band in our
Okay.
area. And I'm talking
You
like,
don't want to give the
you know,
name?
like,
I mean, it's
no,
a
not really.
Sioux Falls jazz band. I mean, like,
That's why
I
I
mean,
want to know who that is.
I mean, they had a number 2 ranking iTunes album though,
Okay. Nice.
in the jazz charts, which is not easy to do. And I didn't know that this was like the record that they just cut. They just got done. They just got the masters back and everything like that. And we're listening to it. And I was like, so this is you guys? And he's like, yeah, this is us. I was like, this is really, really good. The only thing I don't like is the drums. I think they're a little too rock oriented. And he's like, oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just like where we left it. And I was like, but I will say this, their next album did not have drums on it.
Interesting.
So there's that.
You turned the tides. Yeah.
We should hire me.
Yeah, there we are. Yeah. But my point is to say, like, I think that you need to have certain relationships first. There needs to be an understanding. You can't just walk up and give us.
Well, I'm curious, like, what would make you feel like sort of qualified to be like in that way? Like, like, had you been a musician before,
no, I'm not a musician at all?
So like, are you just like such a connoisseur of music where you're like, I really like that, and I think other people should do that or whatever? Like, did you have like that sense, or like? I think that's, it's just it's interesting to like feel like you could go up to Stephen Christian and feel confident enough that you should be able to like say like, hey, this is what I think you should have done.
It's silly.
Like, I mean, I think that's, but also, or to tell Aaron Weiss like, hey, you should break up this song. Like, there's got to be some level of feeling like I think I know what I'm talking about on that, about that. Like that's, you got to have like something that would like maybe demonstrate to yourself that you could be able to do that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I was so young. I was like, you know what I mean? Like I'm 20, 22, 20, 21, 22. And so, I think it was just a little arrogant, you know, and I just had a little bravado, and yeah, I mean, I do think I have good ideas and I think I have really good taste, but, I'd probably be less apt to sort of do something like that, you know. But that's what I'm saying. It's just like, you're young, you're stupid. I mean, what have you got?
Well, maybe you could be the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles next time.
I wanted to like kind of like be more adult and like have some authority to my voice in terms of what I thought, what I consumed, what I said.
Yeah. So what's the story of going from, hey, Aaron, you should do this with your song, to, hey, I'm managing Me Without You? Like, there's got to been there has to be a story there that would lead you into that, right?
Well, there's probably there's a full like 5 years in between those, 5 or 6 years in between those two moments. Yeah, I mean, the story of it is that Me Without You was my favorite band. Catch Us, the Foxes. When that came out, it was just like blew my mind, and I wanted to listen to that album all of the time. And being from Philadelphia, living in Philadelphia, and then being from the area, and then also living close, and then being a part of the same like church community, we were all kind of connected through this church called Circle of Hope, which Mason, you guys have interviewed Johnny Rashid, who was a part of that church.
Yeah, that's right.
He's a friend of mine as well. Anyway, that's my point, is that like we all knew we're in the same like circle of friends, and yeah, I just found myself in their company, you know, and became friends. And then it just was like, I don't know, I inserted myself in a way. Like, I was like, this is my favorite band. Like, I'm going to go be friends with these guys, and that's going to be cool. And graduated college, and then just said like, hey, can I come on tour? Came on tour. You know, they weren't able to pay me. It was early times. It was like this is like June 2006. And just kept coming on tour. And eventually they paid me. And then I just kept taking on more and more responsibility, and to the point where, you know, they were done their contract with Tooth and Nail. Their manager at the time, Blaze James, he dropped the band and it was totally right. The band was being totally uncooperative. wasn't doing what Blaze wanted them to do, and Blaze was trying to build this band into being like this big thing, and BlackSheep was like, we just want to do it our own way, and that's kind of always been the ethos of that band. They're not ready to fall in line. And so when that vacancy of managers came into place, Josh Bender, who had been our tour manager, became the band's manager in this sort of like strange interim time between It's All Crazy and 10 Stories. And then Josh and I eventually got our heads together about doing a self-release, and we became like co-managers essentially. So that was around like 2011. Josh and I sort of became like partners in managing Me Without You.
10 Stories came out in 2012, right?
Yeah, May 15th, 2012.
Yeah. So you were the manager by that point, right?
Yes, I was. That was, I would say, doing that self-release and putting out that record was the impetus for me to sort of step up from my doing merch and doing tour managing to actually managing, right? And trying to facilitate distribution and album artwork and just all the logistics of putting out a record, essentially becoming our own like label, you know? So
yeah, it was part of Run for Cover, right?
No. The first one was completely independent. We had
really? Okay, I didn't realize
we had label services through a company called Red Eye Distribution out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and they do like Barsook and all this stuff. They do lots of stuff. 4AD, I think Josh had made that connection, Josh Bender, and so they did our distro. They gave us advances on manufacturing for certain things, and just we were able to put all the records together with them and just ship it out through their merch store that they gave us, and just kind of like all these things like germinated from there. And there's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of gosh, it feels crazy the way it's been sophisticated now. But then those early days were pretty touch and go with the online sales and just learning how to do everything on the fly.
The music industry was especially changing in that time around 2012, where you're really moving from like the iTunes stuff being really big to streaming, and it's a really tumultuous time for a lot of artists. So that's an interesting.
I remember we had to choose between where this is like the first record that was going to stream for Me Without You. We were like, who do you want the exclusive stream to go through? And it was between like a new company called Spotify and another new company called Rdio. Do you remember Rdio? And it was like, what's it going to be, Rdio or Spotify? And it's like, Rdio is not even a thing anymore, I don't think. But it's like, it was like that. It was so new. And there was even question marks of like, should we even be streaming a new record? People just going to get it for free?
What? Why did it have to be exclusive? Was that like just like a part of the deal or what?
It's just like a marketing thing. It's just like if it's exclusive to or for a certain period of time, like Spotify or Rdio will promote it. They'll put it on playlists, or they'll put it up on the new music, or whatever it would be.
Sure.
So some exclusivity gives them incentive for their platform, essentially.
Oh God, those poor artists that went with Rdio.
Yeah, exactly. All their stuff eventually just went to Spotify and then to Apple Music, and then.
Could you imagine?
So something I'm kind of curious on here is like you kind of alluded to it earlier in that the band doesn't really want to fall in line. They kind of want to do stuff their own way.
Oh yeah.
But in that as well, I mean, the band's got to make some sort of capital in order to continue to be a band. I mean, you have to be able to get from place to place. You have to be able to, at some point, take care of families and stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah, you gotta put dumpster food on the table.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to get grease for the van, for the hubs or anything like that. But for the actual,
I know, for the engine,
tanks. So how do you have that conversation with them? Be like, hey, we have to kind of transition here and be a little more serious about this, or did you not do that? Did you just let them kind of be them and kind of empower them, or what does this look like? Because I can't imagine trying to wrangle in these minds and these let's say individuals that are also.
I don't want to get it twisted. They're very self-motivated people.
Yeah, for sure.
Every single, across all, 8 or 9 members of the band through the 21 years, 20, whatever, how many years it's been, everyone is very self-motivated. Everyone is concerned about making a living, right? So it wasn't that like, you brought up like money. It's like, it's not that like money wasn't important. It was just hard to come by,
Yeah,
and
but
the
I mean,
band
like,
was,
there's certainly going to be like
oh, I see.
choices that you make that are not going to be economically viable. And even if you're a self-starter or not, like it might take an outside voice to say like, hey, this might not be the best route. You know what I mean?
I would say that here are the things that like me that you wouldn't want to do in like those early times is like, we wouldn't want to bring out a sound engineer because it's just like, it's an extra cost. Everything was about like saving money. So it's like, you want to tour comfortably. So that's a bus. Well, the bus is like $40,000. And it's like, or it's X amount, however many, however the day rate is, and the fuel, and then paying the driver, and all this sort of, and then you have a crew, and everything's like skeleton crew. So it's like, well, we want a bus. We'll buy our own bus. Okay, great. Well, the fuel costs, it's like, oh, well, we'll hook up a grease engine to it, and the diesel engine will run off of food waste, essentially. And it's like, well, we don't want to pay a driver. It's like, oh, well, we'll get it registered as an RV, and we won't need a CDL, and it'll be under certain, we'll be able to actually drive it ourselves. And so it's these sort of like ideas of like, how can we not cut corners? It would end up being that, and sometimes like we would be cutting corners, we'd be actually doing a disservice to ourselves. But it was always in the spirit of like finding the thing that like either made it more interesting or made it more profitable, or just anything, or just getting rid of anything that's like superfluous, it was seen as unnecessary. So the ways that we kind of hurt ourselves is not having a sound engineer. Josh Bender, he was a sound engineer for a long time, but he was also the tour manager. But he's just like the tour manager who would come on and he would get on in the house system, and he kind of self-taught. And but when you get like a real engineer, like we brought on a couple engineers, and later on in life, or later on in the band's career, most notably Michael Lane, who was our engineer or is still our engineer from 2015 and on. Like that is a game changer. Like it makes the day-to-day easier. Like mentally, it just goes smoother. Like the show sounds better. Like there's less strife within the band because there's less gear failures, or like people can hear themselves on stage. Like everything goes better.
And the crowd enjoys it more generally.
And the crowd enjoys it. The crowd will always say that they can't hear the vocals, but that's just because they're standing
too close
behind the PA. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There's just things like that we didn't quite always fall in line with. I'd say though, like, more often than not, it benefited the band. Like, if not, it made us sort of more appealing, I think, from sort of like from a punk aspect, or like like a hippie aspect. Just like doing something that was DIY, that was sort of countercultural, that was always like, it was cool. And I don't think it was ever really like, this is going to be countercultural. It was like, no, we're just going to do it our way. We're going to do something that we want to do it, that's interesting to us. And so much of that was Chris Kleinberg, and it's probably mostly Chris Kleinberg and Aaron and Mike to the least degree of those people, but still a great. That's not saying that Mike's not, but my point is Chris and Aaron were like, the bus broke down. It's like they're up, shirts off, inside of like a diesel manifold, like 5 hours before a show.
Oh, gosh.
Trying to like figure out if we dropped a valve, or why
the
is
world
the bus
needs to see a
overheating?
shirtless Aaron Weiss, by the way.
I mean, everyone, he's half naked on stage.
Yeah, I was gonna say most of the time he was.
Yeah, he's like, when he gets sweaty, and he's just skin and bones. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to. That shirt comes off pretty quick. In a sweaty room, yeah.
Or if he's trying to cross a river, right?
Yeah, which I forget which river it was, but I think it's like the Chesapeake.
Yeah, that's a really poor idea.
Do you know that story?
Yes. And he was on a bus with a person that he was romantically interested in.
Yes.
I heard this on the Labeled podcast. Yeah, where he's like romantically interested in this
did
person.
Mike tell this story?
I I think it was Mike.
Okay,
But yeah,
I
he was
guess-
like he's on the bus, and like clearly can kind of tell like the girl is not into him or whatever.
Mhm.
And he was like, "All right, I need to like, can you stop the bus now?" And I'll just like head back. And he like ends up like hitchhiking back.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, like he gets off and then has to like cross some river. And so he literally like swimming across this river, gets across it.
Yeah.
And then like he's so exhausted, he like is in somebody's yard or something, like on the shores of this river, and is like asleep on this rock or whatever, and then wakes up. And that like the moment I forget what the lyric is, but one of the lyrics in January 1979 is where it's like he's like being worshipped by like all these like little bugs and creatures
the
or whatever.
grasshopper king with their dance of
Yeah.
celebration.
So that like that moment where he wakes up, he's like in this sort of lucid dream, and that lyric is what is from that moment in his life.
Yeah, there's a lot of it was some girl that he was with, and he said like I'll try and string it all together, but like he was with some girl. He was coming back from DC, going back to Philadelphia, and he looked at this girl, and the way he described it is like it was like hallucinatory. Like he looked at her and she like turned to like a skeleton. And that's when he got out of the car. You said bus, I don't know what it was, the vehicle. And then he crossed, I think it was the Chesapeake River. And it was next to a bridge, like a street.
Yeah.
And he opted for the crazy thing, and he tries to swim across this river at night. That's why floating in a peaceful sea, rescued by a sinking ship, like that whole sort of stuff. So it's like all this. I don't even know why or how or what, but every time we cross it, we cross that bridge coming back from like the Black Cat or something like that. That gets brought up.
I mean, whom among us hasn't done a stupid thing for a girl?
No, he also at one point I think he rode his bike to Boston from Philadelphia after a tour to propose to a young woman who he had like maybe met once.
That's a helpless romantic. I love it.
Yo, he definitely, and that's the key.
Yeah,
it's really good that he was never on The Bachelorette.
The big gesture is sort of like the big romantic thing is like what he's like very attracted to, I think. It's the same thing with even just sort of like, even when he would dumpster dive, it's just sort of it's almost like he kind of gamified it at some point where it was just like, I have money, but like I know that there's probably a half a Big Mac in there, and like it'd be fun to find it and eat it. I was like, okay,
yeah. Who can get the best Big Mac out of this dumpster?
This idea that you don't have to just give in to food waste, and that there's so much bounty around us that is. Yeah. You may think it's gross, and to some degree it is, but like it's also safe to eat and largely delicious. It's not like
I think it inspired.
On it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I think it inspired a lot of dumpster diving because in college I used to go, and this wasn't by necessity by any means, but I used to go to the bakery in town, and I would go dumpster dive, and I would grab like loaves of bread out of their dumpster, and they were always like fresh.
Exactly.
Like maybe a day old.
Yeah, the 2-day-old ones.
They were great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, oh boy, I have like week-old bread in my kitchen, and we made a BLT today. It's like it's not like the bread is that bad.
Right.
But it's just not. It's just not up to the standards of like what you would get at a fresh bakery. So
exactly, and I kind of love that they all live their lives like with some sort of like conviction like that.
Right.
But there's something I'm curious about. What's one of those stories about Me Without You that has not been shared that you can think of? Like, what's one of those things where you're like, I can't believe that this is a thing that happened to this band, and I was witness to it, or something like that,
and has never been publicly told.
Oh my God! I wish you would have given me a second to think about this. I have to roll back through like.
Well, I just thought about it a little bit ago.
The last 2 decades of things that have happened. I don't know. I mean, there's I don't know. There's so many. I mean, it's been somewhat publicized, the whole thing in Russia. When the band got not pulled over, they had their show stopped in Murmansk, which is like in like the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, and it's way north.
It's way north. They're playing like a basement show on like toy drum sets and just like any piece of equipment they could get their hands on. This is what the promoter set up as like an additional thing. And the police, the KGB came in and like stopped the show, got everyone out, like detained the band on like having the wrong visas. High responsibility, by the way.
Oh no.
And they brought him, they detained him, and I'm not there, by the way, because I don't love to travel to Europe because it's just I'm not going to be driving. I'm not like it's not really worth my time. Like I have to hire someone to do all the work that I would do anyway. So we usually have a tour manager over there who runs around, do stuff. I just stay back here with my family. I felt somewhat guilty about that, but because I like to be in the trenches, and this was the trenches, right? Like
you got to be careful saying trenches around Moscow.
Yeah, well, the opportunity came up to get these 2 dates in Russia, one of them Moscow, and the answer was like, yeah, let's do it. This was like, that sounds great. This is before any of this. This is 2000. I don't even know when it was. 2017, maybe 2016, 2017. And so it was like, let's do it. Some apprehension from some people, but it's gonna be fine, right? Anyway, I go through the process. The guy tells me, hey, you get these visas. It's we'll pay. It's like not like an artist. It's like an artist visa, or it's not a working visa because you're getting paid in US dollars and it's being wired to you beforehand. So it's like money doesn't actually change hands in Russia. Therefore, this is the workaround, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, Moscow show goes off with a hitch. I mean, Aaron like dislocates his finger, not unlike like what happened to Jalen Hurts.
Oh wait, is that the one where he like? There's that picture where it's like his.
Yeah.
That's in Moscow. I didn't realize that.
That's in Moscow, and he refused to take any pain meds for it. Like when they were gonna put it back. That's just he's got to go full tilt, right? No drugs. It's like not even like pain.
I will be honest. If I'm in Russia, I'm probably not taking any of their pain
Fair
meds
enough,
either.
boy. A lot of
I just don't trust them.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, there's normal people in Russia too, right? And not everything is like
there are, but I yeah. Well, I
don't know actually. Yeah. Anyway, so they went to Russia or they went to Moscow, and then it was suggested a couple months before, like, hey, we could also tag on like Murmansk. And I was like, sure, let's do Murmansk. And guys were like, yeah, fine. One more show. So they just did. Murmansk was the one in the basement, and that's was just like total ragtag. Like no one comes here to play. Clearly, there's no equipment around to even play on. They get detained by the cops. They get brought into like a holding room. One by one, they're brought in, and like they're being shown like photographs of themselves at the airport, like either coming into Russia or coming. Like they've been watched the entire time they've been in the Arctic Circle.
What?
And they're all yelling at each member in Russian, and no one has any idea what's going on. I'm at home in Philadelphia, and I get a call from Rick from Russia, and he is just like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. They got us. They're taking us somewhere. I don't know. Can you just call my wife? Like, I was just like, what? And he's like,
at that point, do you think he's joking?
No, I don't think he's joking.
Like it was clear that he was not joking.
What's going on? Like, what can I do? Like, what can I do?
Yeah.
And then like, I heard nothing for like days, or like a day maybe. Like they got back the next day, I guess, because what eventually happened was they were released from this detainment. They had another translator there who was like translating for them, and all this. They had their liaison, and they were let go. Everyone's like shaking with fear. They think this is gonna be like Pussy Riot, right? Where it's like, Pussy Riot. They're gonna get detained. It's gonna be this awful thing. Someone's gonna get caned, like, and that's and.
Could you imagine what that would have done to the status of the band,
believe me,
like internationally?
It's been talked about.
Oh my gosh, that was a missed opportunity, is what that was.
All Rick had to do was be like in a Russian prison for 5 years. They get on the flight, and like they're like, Beaver tells this story, like this utter dread coming up. Like he didn't feel like he was safe, like even as the plane was taking off. He felt like any moment they were going to be grounded again and brought back in for, like, they were just mortified with fear. And that was, so and the Billboard wrote about it to some degree, like Russian Billboard or European Billboard, not even American Billboard. So yeah, that was a pretty, and I wasn't even there for it. That's what, and I want to be there for it. I want to be, if I'm responsible for it, and this is my band, like, I want to be there to have the experience and live to tell about it, but also like the solidarity of it. Like, I felt incredible guilt. Like, I should have been there. I should have been detained. I should have been like having these like Russian cops scream at me. I should have been in fear for my life. Like, but I don't get to have that experience. I just have to get to talk about it on a podcast.
There's like Russian cops just not into like indie post-hardcore bands or what?
No, I think they're just into like Russian dominance. I think is what it is. Just that. There's not, art is not something they're really concerned with. Wow. It's just about the state.
So were they not charged with anything?
No.
Was there
no
like
the slap on the wrist, not even a fine. It's just,
what was the point of them getting detained in the first place? Like, what was their reason?
Fear.
The visa.
Fear.
Was it
just like driving home? Like, don't mess with Russia, I guess. Wow. Maybe something happened to the promoter, where he got in trouble in some way. But
wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That's the first one that comes to mind.
Huh.
That's terrifying.
Wow. Sort of along those lines, though, it sounds like you sort of like fell into this, where, you're just like literally at like, hey, this is a band that I really like, and I'm wanting to become friends with them, and then you do. It doesn't sound like you were like a music industry insider by any means. And so was there anything as you went into specifically the managing role of this where you're like, oh shit, there's like industry stuff that I'm going to have to navigate now that I had no idea about before? Because that seems to like have to be a thing that had to have been a part of this since you didn't have that prior experience.
Yeah, and I don't wonder how much people have. I mean, I didn't really have any real mentorship outside of Josh Bender, and it was there was a couple of moments where I was like, oh boy, I'm out of my depth, But I realized in those moments now, you can just like, if you're working with relationships with people who you trust, if you have relationships with people that you trust, right? You can be humble. You can ask questions, which will make people trust you more. And that's actually something that, Aaron would ask me. I would say a word, and he goes, "What does that word mean?" I'm like, "You don't know what that word means?" But instead of faking it, he just would straight out admit, "I don't know what that word means. What does it mean?" And then here I am teaching him, and then our bond grows stronger. And I feel like that's something that would have helped me. Well, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Well, there was a time when Me Without You was getting offers to tour with Paramore overseas. And it was like super duper last minute. It was like, usually when you do like tours, it's like, I'm giving a couple months like heads up. And we all sit down, we talk about it, we agree to it, and then we just figure out how to do it. Europe's a whole different beast because like now I've got to like budget stuff. I don't get to bring my bus over. I got to rent, it's not our own gear. We got to get flights. We got to get the TM. We got to deal with merch. We got all this crap. So it's a whole logistical thing. And this offer comes up while we're on tour. So I'm managing this tour and I'm potentially dealing with this thing that happens in 10 days. And like, I have to like negotiate guarantees, but I have like another booking agent who is a European booking agent who is just like, and I've never really even met him. He's just like a guy that can help you find gigs overseas. And he was the one doing all like the negotiating, and there was no relationship between him and Paramore's European agent. I didn't really have a relationship with Paramore's management. And so like so much stuff is like getting lost in translation, and I'm just like, I just need more money to make this happen. Are we Paramore's favorite band? Just like give us £2,000 a night, and like we can make this happen. No one has to like, we just break even. You know, it'd be fun.
Yeah.
And anyway, it fell through. It never happened.
Wow.
That one didn't, and that was which I was somewhat relieved about, because I was like, this is too much work at the last minute for this thing for me. Guys were all disappointed, and our booking agent in the U.S. was really bummed out, because he's like, I have a relationship with all of those people. Who the heck is this other agent that you're like? Why didn't you ask me to do this thing? We had this like big heart to heart in Brooklyn after a show, and I was like, I didn't know. He's like, I will tell these guys to fire you. Like, this is like, well, you royally have screwed up here. And I was just like, you know, and I was able to be somewhat honest and bare with the guys. I was like, I feel like I screwed this up. Like, Bridgewater, our agent at the time, was like, he told me that, like, you know, like, he's gonna tell you guys to fire me. He's like, we're not gonna fire you. It's like we all love Justin, but like, we're not gonna fire you based on his word on this situation. And I was like, oh, okay, good. You know, but that was a moment where I was like, oh, I really needed to trust Justin if I had questions. I felt like I could be like, well, I'll just figure this out on my own. But what I needed to do is like really rely on my team. And I just didn't know that like Justin would deal with anything non-domestically, right? I figured just like he won't even touch Europe. He doesn't even know Europe. They have a whole office. He was part of the agency group. They have a whole office in Europe that could have helped this out. Got this thing, you know, it would have been fine. So that was a big like moment to learn. And a lot of stuff like in this day and age, boy, it's so helpful to just look at Google. Like what certain things are and how certain things are done. But you know, you can fake it till you make it. You can also just ask questions. You know,
it is shocking that at no point there was a Paramore Me Without You tour.
There was, it just wasn't in the U.S. We did.
When was that?
We did Southeast Asia with them.
When was that?
It was Southeast Asia was, I'm going to say 2014, maybe 2015. Okay. I can't remember exactly. I want to say 2014. And then they did did shows of Paramore, I think in 2019 in Europe as well. And I wasn't there for that, but okay. I think that's what it was. Yeah. So
but even in America, I can't believe they wouldn't.
Now we did Parahoy like 3 times, right? So we did their cruise. Right. So I mean, we were given so many opportunities, but it's like, yo, let's go on a freaking national tour. Like, like that'd be fun. like, you know, like it's like we all know each other. Like, I'm in a fantasy football league with Taylor York. It's like with Rick, you know, like it's just like, let's make this happen, right? It never.
By the way, is Taylor York? Is he good at fantasy football?
No.
Okay, all right.
No, I think he was almost like trolling us. I think like in the draft, like he was just picking like he's one of those guys who's like getting the kicker in the second round just to like mess with people. That's how I remember it. But
I love that.
He fared a lot better, and I tried, and I failed miserably this year.
Well, I got
in a situation where I was like, I had a great team on fantasy, and it was like I would kick everyone else's ass, like except for the one person that I would go against that week. It's just the matchup never worked out. It's like, I have 163. It's like, you just happen to have 164. Meanwhile, everyone else is like 110. You know what I mean? It's like I would have cleaned up. But I'm starting to get
convinced. I'm starting to become convinced that happens to everybody, because that happens to me too. Every time I do fantasy football.
Oh yeah.
Just everybody PRs against you.
Yeah. I think it's got to be like a mentality thing though, or what do you call it? Like a shared mentality that if you play fantasy football, you're losing by just a couple points every week. that you lose.
Mike, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your side of the story when it comes to like the breakup. Obviously, you were there for roughly 10-ish years, and obviously, like the announcement was like before COVID happened, and then COVID delays everything, and then eventually the final tour happens. But I'd love to hear just kind of like, we talked to Greg about kind of like where he was at in life at the time and why he was sort of like on board with a breakup. I'd love to hear, considering the fact, even though you weren't one of the band members, you were certainly a very important member of Me Without You. I'd love to hear from your side of like what just that whole story of the breakup looked like.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, I'll correct a couple things. It's not a breakup. It's it's a hiatus. It is a hiatus. It is also just a farewell. I think we put it pretty concisely, succinctly in that little message.
On Wikipedia right now it says Me Without You was an American rock band.
Yes,
can we change that to is, and then maybe make the like hiatus piece to it?
If you want to, yeah, you can get past those Wikipedia editors.
There you go. Okay.
We'll do it.
On the mewithoutYou website, it says according to, like, we have a little blurb on there where it just shows the band's picture, and then like it shows a blurb and it says according to Wikipedia, Me Without You was an American rock band. So we try to be somewhat playful with it. But I mean, it's hard to kind of even talk about like what it is, because well, I guess I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I can start from the beginning. Me Without You is hard. It's really hard work, because it requires so much energy in order for it to be sustainable. We have to tour a lot. You have to put out records pretty consistently. You have to try and grow your fan base. You can't really rest on your laurels for too much. So it always has to be movement forward. And that just gets to be harder and harder as you get older and older, right? I think and guys in their mid 40s now, it's just people have families and mortgages and relationships and aging bodies,
PhDs,
other things in front of them that are important, and Me Without You is not the thing that can always guarantee to bring all those things to into their fullest, right? So we had this sort of realization, I would say probably in 2018, like December to the end of December, right around the holiday break. Aaron wrote us an email, and like he often does when we're running a record, where it's just like, guys, I just did vocals for this thing, and I think it's the last song that I can. I have nothing more in me. Like I feel like whatever it is. Like I feel like a shell of myself. Blah blah blah. It's just I think I'm done. I think I've written my last Me Without You song, and I wrote back and I was like, okay, we're so many years into this thing. At this point, like we can just agree that was it. Untitled wasn't even called Untitled at the moment, but this next record will be the last record. Let's just say that. And maybe we can do an album cycle, and then we can move on and do a farewell. And that was always just kind of like, it's some reason, like I feel like there would have been a lot of way more pushback and like sadness to it, but it felt like that was something that was received with a lot of peace. And I don't even know why I suggested it. It just kind of felt like the writing was on the wall. I remember like writing the email like while I was on like when my wife was was trying on clothes like Anthropology and King of Prussia. I'm writing this email just being like, yeah, I think we should end the band then, I guess. Not to be like reactionary, but just to kind of like accept it for what it is. And maybe this is like a good thing. Like you have all these records. We don't need to, how much further can we push? It's always, what can we do in the next album? Like, will Aaron write another record? And all these questions, and people are getting at each other's throats, and things are getting harder. And so I felt like, okay, the writing's on the wall. Like, this can be it. And what will this actually allow us to do is to, in some ways, extend the life of the band by giving it an end date. We can also like live into it being a more healthy and hopefully more profitable time for the group. Have a nice send off, not just like I hate you guys and like we're done and like goodbye forever and we're gonna do one show and that'll be it. It's like we can make it like a celebration of what we did.
Yeah.
And so like coming out from that angle where it's like we're not gonna announce that Untitled is the last album. We're gonna keep that in our back pocket till the album cycle is done, and then we'll be like, hey, by the way, we've got one more year in 2020, and that'll be it. So we make that big announcement, this big outcry, everyone's sad, boo-hoo, and we've got a stacked year set up for 2020. Like we're gonna do reissues and we're of like I don't even know what it was of like Catch or Brother Sister or whatever. We're gonna put all these records back out that you haven't heard in a long time, and we're gonna go on tour with Thrice, and we're gonna do a European tour, and we're gonna do a Brother Sister tour, and we're gonna do a big fair. We're gonna like really do it up for one whole year and go bigger and badder than we've ever been. And I think we all know how that turned out for 2020. It was like we got the Thrice tour in, and then we got back and we announced the Brother Sister tour the day they like were like everything's shutting down. Like
everyone stayed home.
What did they say? Stay in place. What is it? Like shelter in place for 2 weeks.
Shelter in place.
And I just like this is gonna be done. So, we'll be out of this thing in 60 days. Like the on sale's on. Like we have like a 90-day on sale. Like we'll have a good month of like people feeling ready to go out, and it just never came back around, obviously. So we had to kind of like pivot and reset things, obviously, and for like a good 500 plus days until we could play another show. And that was also like in a strange way like a blessing, because it allowed us to spread things out, not feel like everything has to happen within this 9-month period, or this 10-month period, wherever it would be. We could just make it almost a year and a half where we can kind of put the pieces in front of us and knock them down as we can. So I feel like we were able to have a stronger farewell, right? It just, for me, even in terms of the way I would organize my work, the original plan for 2020 would have been like damn near impossible. I probably would have, my marriage would have been in shambles and I would have been overworked and stressed, and it just wouldn't have been great. So having things bump out to 21 and 22 for the farewell was actually very good for the group. And the whole farewell itself, we didn't even really have like a lot of like how we were going to talk about it in place. And we didn't really even talk about it too much, but we put quotations around the farewell. We were explicit and trying not to be like, the band is breaking up, or like, this is the final thing. Everything was like, this is the final quote unquote farewell show. Like we wanted this to be like the band saying goodbye, not like because like, not to be like, this is the final Me Without You show. This is the final time we're saying farewell, but you can always say hello after you've said farewell. We didn't want the permanence of this thing, because we've seen that happen so many times, especially in this modern age where it's like every band breaks up or tells you they're breaking up, and then like they're back a year and a half later. And my opinion is that like I understand why that happens, but it looks a little silly. It looks a little disingenuous from the outside, and we didn't want to be caught too much in that trap. Like I think everyone fully realizes that like there is a great possibility that Me That You will definitely play another show. It's just out there. Like we want that to be a possibility. It may never actually come to fruition. There may never be another Me Without You song, show, or whatever, but like there also at the same time just as much could very well be another song, show, tour, whatever, because life comes at you fast. Things change. Everyone still likes each other. I'm having lunch tomorrow with Mike. We all got together for like a band meeting last Monday. Like, things are still like, we all like, it wasn't a band practice. No one played music, but we discussed future projects for the band and stuff like that we're going to, be doing in 24, and just like trying to everyone's just got the group chat still bumping, right? Everyone's sending memes and telling jokes, and so it's still like a really healthy thing, I think. So it doesn't feel
Not bad after
like it's over.
Philly Eagles loss, right?
Yo, definitely. Oh, we rolled into Rick's house on New Year's Eve. Like, I pulled in to his driveway, or up to his driveway, like right as they like lost to the Cardinals, and I was just like,
what a great
I
day
rolled
as a
in and
Niners
like
fan.
Rick shot me that look of just like, what the hell? And I was like, I don't know. And then Mike rolled up and he was just like, hey, how about them Eagles? It's like,
gonna get fucked up tonight.
A lot of like commiserating for like. Luckily, it was really nice because it was New Year's Eve and we were all there together, and like there wasn't too much commiserating. Rick's place has terrible 5G, so I couldn't even check Twitter to like see what people were kind of complaining about, even if I wanted to, So like I kind of like got some space from it at that moment.
Does Aaron still not have a smartphone?
No, of course he does. Yeah.
Oh, he does now. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he's moved up in the world.
Yeah, it's just like there's certain things like when you would go on tour and like you can't call your wife, or you have to borrow someone else's phone. It's like
carrier pigeons still could potentially exist. I don't know.
No, I think that's like a. Yeah, I mean, he would always have like different ones. He's a little clumsy. He would lose them pretty frequently. And so I don't think he has. I don't know what he has. I don't know. But yeah, he's had one, and it's great. It's nice that he has it. He picks up. He FaceTimes. Yeah. He never gets back to text.
That's good to hear.
He's like, it was his birthday on 2 days ago on the 21st, and then the group chat's like, "Yo, happy birthday," and blah 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 blah. Just like 2 days later, he responds like, he's very Thanks. Like he's just not paying attention to it. He's just not paying attention to the text message thread.
That sounds like what I would assume of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's always the last person.
I can really appreciate that.
Emails. He is literally. He's detached from the band in a way now that is not normal for him, because I mean his life is in Nampa, Idaho, and he's teaching, and he's got kids, and he's got homes out there, and he's just got stuff going on. He's busy all the time.
Yeah.
And so like the band, so that thing I stopped doing like 14, 18 months ago, like I'm not, it's just not as it's not in front of him. So
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Before we get into your top 5, I'd love to hear just kind of how you think about the legacy of Me Without You. Obviously, you're talking about like, that at certain points this band feels sort of untenable, and just in terms of like the finances, where it's like you're having to go so hard just to make ends meet. At the same time, you've got one of the biggest artists in the world who that's her favorite band with Haley Williams. And you've got one of the biggest up and coming artists with Julian Baker, and obviously like her work with Boy Genius as like, I mean, I think she was at one of the last Me Without Your, at least the Nashville show.
Yeah.
So like you have artists who very much respect Me Without You. It's one of their favorite bands.
Yeah.
And yet it's also a band where it's like, it's small enough where you guys really had to work your asses off just to make it tenable.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about just like how you think about the legacy of Me Without You as somebody who has a different relationship with the band than being someone like Aaron, right? So I'm just curious, like how you think about that lasting legacy, because for so many people, Me Without You is not only their favorite band, but one of the most important bands, especially for those of us that grew up in like the evangelical world and have a way different faith than that now. And I still remember like going to a Me Without You show and feeling like this is like one of the most like queer friendly like band venue spaces I've ever been a part of. And it's like weird to think that was like a band that was like really well known in the evangelical world at one point with obviously Tooth and Nail connections. So anyway, I'm just curious like how you think about that lasting legacy with all of these different factors being a part of Me Without You, where you've got like a lot of LGBTQ fans, you've got like the Julian Bakers and Haley Williams of the world that really care about Me Without You. You've got all these fans that are like, and you've got bands nowadays that would say like I wouldn't be a band without Me Without You. I'm just curious like how you would think of that lasting legacy given the fact of your role in the band.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or if there is a legacy, because it's not over.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
not
true.
all of it's written, I suppose. I mean, a large portion of it is.
Yeah.
I think that the legacy of the band is that like, the legacy. I don't know. That is a strange. It's an interesting question because I do think about that word legacy, but I don't know if I've ever actually been able to define what it is for Me Without You.
Mm.
You'd probably have to ask people who weren't as close to it. You know, like, well, I'm in it. Like today, I'm in it. You can see like surrounded by records and merch and like people's packages still, and like I'm still, Me That You. The legacy of it is what we did today and what we're doing tomorrow. It's still an active thing for me. So I don't know. I think that it's just. I think for people, it's probably like the big takeaway from the band is sort of the accessibility to mysticism, through the lyrics.
Oh.
I think that's been something that's and that's not even something I naturally even like resonate with. That's a strange thing for me to say. I'm not a real lyrics guy. I don't really
No, I get
I have
that.
no idea what any Me Without You song is really about. I don't know. I get half the references from Aaron, or not even half, the 90% of the references. So I'm not really focused on that part of it, but I do feel like there is an openness to Me Without You, with their fans, their accessibility that they would allow themselves with their potlucks, or their sort of like the Sacred Heart sessions that Aaron would have before. Like there was like this idea of like we can come together. We can do something different than just like the hierarchy of like band to fan. Like trying to even that playing field, being humble, but then also sort of like being excellent on top of it. Like not just as musicians, because they're excellent musicians and incredible songwriters, but I think there is this idea that we can also like be excellent to the people that support us, and I think that's a big part of it. It's like it's never taken for granted, where it's just like these people come out to shows, buy merch online, listen to our records, talk about us in the media, like to the small amount of degree they do. But I think that would be. I think it's just like the legend of Me Without You is that like here's a crazy band that like was ready to get down and dirty and like meet people.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite quotes of all time is actually from Julian. And I think it was like in a New Yorker interview that she did a number of years ago, but she says, "Punk teaches the same inversion of the power of the gospel. You learn that the coolest thing about having a microphone is turning it away from your own mouth." And knowing that Julian was like a big Me Without You fan, like I can't imagine that like when she's saying that quote that she wasn't thinking about Aaron and Me Without You. Like given the nature of Me Without You and the ethos, the ethics of Me Without You, that like has to be a big influence of the coolest thing that we can do is like make this a family. Like let's turn the spotlight from ourselves. Like we enjoy the music and we love making the music and we love performing it, but like you're all a part of this. Like every one of you matters in all of this. I think that's such a powerful way of thinking about music, and certainly that there's a punk ethic to that.
Sure. Yeah, I think I think about the way that like Aaron even conducts himself on stage. Like when he talks to the crowd, it's never like, "Chicago, Illinois, how are you tonight? Let's get ready." It's none of the pump up stuff. It's like, "Hi,
right.
Like we're Me Without You. How are you all?" It's like this, like sort of like there's like a meekness to it. There's a tenderness to it. It's never trying to be like this big like rah thing. He's never acting like you're the crowd and he's the band leader. It's like there's like this there can be a back and forth. Like, does anybody have any questions? Like, it was something he would ask.
Right.
It's like it's a silly thing to do, but it is this sort of like inversion of the typical like rock star idea of what this is.
He really does feel like the anti rock star.
Yeah, For sure.
He's the folk artist in the metal or in the rock world.
Yeah. You know what,
Like,
Rick?
That's how a folk artist would talk.
Rick
right?
said something. I talked to Rick today on the phone, and he mentioned this. He's like, when he talked about, he's like, it's about when Aaron started to first like look homeless, and he said it was some kid came up to him at some festival, and it was just like he said something that was like, you know, you guys are up on stage and you're all like fit and you're all like handsome and like well dressed and like you're cool and you play cool music and you look cool playing your music. He's like, but like me, like I'm like overweight and like I can't write cool songs. Like you guys, like I want you guys to be my role models, but like you're not my role models. Like you're like you could never be. Like I could never be you. And I think like that stuck with like Aaron, and he was just like, oh
Wow.
Time to only wear thrift store clothing and like eat out of a dumpster, like, and just, you know, not shave as much or not, you know, whatever, however he would just look, you know, and that, so that like this idea that like the vanity of what comes with being like cool in a rock band, he was like, well, I'm not going to have any part of that. I never heard that story until today. And I wonder how much of it's true, or how much of it is being embellished or is disconnected from reality. But I think you say something like that to Aaron. This is one of Rick's points. Like, oh, it's funny how like anybody can just get in Aaron's head and it'll get him spinning. I was like, yeah, there does have to be conviction. Like he has to hear that and it has to resonate. And once it resonates, like a guy like Aaron just can't let it go. He has to listen to that small voice and like live into its truth, like, and just be the thing that he's convicted to be. He's so convicted. He has to tell the truth. He has to be himself. It serves him well. And that's a lesson to learn too. Just kind of like listen to your conscience. When someone says something, don't just immediately be like recoil from it and be like, that's not true. And like be defensive. It's like actually listen and hear the parts that speaks to you and let that inner voice change you.
Dude, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that a lot.
I mean,
I think that's exactly what should be taken from it.
Yeah. And Aaron feels like he embodies that more than almost anybody else, you know, anybody else I know in my own life. Even though obviously I don't know him personally, but
and Mike, it sounds like you do too.
What's that?
That you've taken that same kind of thought process into your own life.
Yeah, I try, but I'm still a coward. Aaron's much braver than I am.
That's okay. One last question before we get to top 5 most influential.
Listen,
Was it a requirement for you to have facial hair?
No, I mean I can barely grow facial hair. This is it. This mustache.
Are you kidding me? That's an excellent mustache.
Thank you. I just had it trimmed. But
it's beautiful.
Yeah, over at Bud's Barbershop at the southwest corner at 16th and Rittner. Yeah. So.
Bud.
Yeah, Bud. No, it's not. I mean, I can't grow anything. I've tried to grow facial hair for years, and
so
I have
Mason.
A baby face.
That's as far as he's gotten.
Yeah. Yours is you look good though.
It does now.
Like I'm able to do like kind of the 5 o'clock shadow thing, but after that it just gets all stringy and nasty looking.
Yeah, it's the same with me. Like, and I can't connect right here. Like, it just doesn't connect.
Yeah, I can't either.
And like, actually, my sideburns don't connect either to my hairline.
Oh man.
So like,
that's a bummer.
So I'm real patchy, but the mustache is pretty strong. So that's the way. And because I have a baby face, I've always wanted a beard because I kind of want to hide some of this, like bring on some masculinity to my look. The mustache is all I can do. And I probably wore facial hair like twice in my 17 years of Me Without You. Like, so yeah.
So the mustache is new, is what you're saying?
I would do it now, right? I'd be like, yeah, I gotta get the stash going for the tour. I gotta blend in.
I love that.
I love that. Mike, you ready for your top 5 most influential albums?
Yeah, sure.
All right, you can start wherever you want to start, but love to hear a little bit more about each one too.
Sure. So I would say top 5 most influential records that changed my life. The first one that comes to mind is Upbeats and Beatdowns by 5 Iron Frenzy.
Oh yeah. Of course.
For a lot of different reasons. They were my favorite band growing up. They're still one of my favorite bands, if I'm being totally honest. I just can't shake them. And
how can they not be?
Yeah, and their last 2 records are their best records.
Yeah.
So, but that record like was like, oh, this is like, I was raised in the church. I would never describe. You're big on like evangelical talk, Mason. I'm like, I don't evangelical. I don't even know what that is necessarily. But I was raised in the church. You probably call my family evangelical. I probably call me an ex-evan.
Look at you.
Yeah. Well, I follow you on Twitter. So I've seen all the memes. So yeah, 5 Iron was like this thing of like, was like, whoa, this is countercultural. This is new. Like what? But it's also like fast and it's fun and it's political and it's social and it's spiritual and it's like, it's all these things and it's wild and wacky. And so, but serious.
Tongue in cheek at times.
Yeah, it's all these things. Anyway, Upbeats and Beatdowns like shook me out of like whatever like CCM like pop path I was on and like forced me on to like this like alternative like music path. So that'd be one. I would put Catch for Us the Foxes as another one. That's a record that obviously I'm deeply connected to. Here it is. It's on the shelf over here. It's being packaged on these. It changed my life. It was a record that I first heard on like purevolume.com. It was like recommended to me to listen to like January and then Paper Hanger and downloaded my roommate Keemon downloaded a leak of it and we listened to it in his room and just was like, holy cow, like on his like laptop, not his laptop, his like desktop computer, just like sat there for the whole like 42 minutes and just like, listened to this thing and then like listened to it again with him and like I just couldn't get it out of my head. And that really changed the course of my life because my love for that record eventually led me to the relationships in Me Without You and to my 2 decades long sort of career in music and most specifically with Me Without You. After that, I probably have to put The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle by Bruce Springsteen. Saw Springsteen play on Late Night with Conan O'Brien. And he played, I would say it's a Christmas show. So he played 2 songs. He's Springsteen on at 12:35 on NBC on this like ragtag show, right? In I guess the late 90s. And he played Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and he played Kitty's Back, which I was like, I've never even heard this song. I didn't know this is Bruce Springsteen, but it was like really like freewheeling and horns were being played and the song was like 8 minutes long. And I was like, Bruce Springsteen sounds like this. And when I got that record, I was like, whoa, Bruce Springsteen can sound like this. Like early Springsteen, like early, like 72 Springsteen can really let it rip and let it go. His career is so different across all his discography, across all his decades. But that is that Kitty's Back and like Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle is what kind of like got me into Springsteen and into that larger body of work. And he is one of my all-time favorites. He's still good today. In some ways, he's just as good as he was back in 72. So like I would put that record on there as well. So it's Upbeats and Beatdowns, Catch for Us the Foxes, The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. 4. The next one that comes to mind is probably In the Airplane Over the Sea by Future Milk Hotel.
Future Milk Hotel.
Yeah. I just think that Jeff Mangum has such an incredible voice and such a gift, a knack for simple songs that are just, they have so much life. It's just mostly an acoustic with some like accompaniment at times. And his voice and that acoustic and those, C, A, D, and G chords, like he can make a record, man. And it's wild and weird and sexy and trippy. And it's like folky. Like, he's great. So I like that. He really,
if there's any artist that I ever compare to Me Without You, It's Neutral Milk Hotel.
Really?
There's so many similarities that just I don't even understand how it works because that's such a unique sound. But the fact that there's like two artists that kind of have some of that similar sound.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Me Without You is a little bit more dynamic and has a lot more going on.
Especially the
they also
pretty
have more
parts of Me
songs.
Without You.
What's that?
Yeah.
The pretty parts of Me Without You, I think, definitely sound like Neutral.
They're influenced
Milk
a lot by Neutral Milk. Like
Yeah.
Greg will tell you that. Aaron will tell you that as well. It's All Crazy has a lot of Neutral Milk influence on it. So that's a big one. And then for number 5, I don't know, to be quite honest. Like, it's really hard for me to think about it in terms of like, could you say influential, right? Or like important, like the way they've kind of changed you. I'm sure it's something really obvious that I'm just not remembering, but it's like,
how about like when you were a kid? Like, what was like the first album that like just like turned you on to music? It's like, wow, this is something that is going to mean something more to me than just
it was the radio.
Your average run of the mill kiddo. Right?
Yeah, no, I mean it was the radio. I saw this girl I had a crush on, Becca Lee, in home ec, and she was singing along to the radio while she was. I know, who sings that song? Is it Sophie B. Hawkins?
Radio
As I Lay Me.
killed the video star.
No, she was singing that song, and I was like, I need to listen to music. This like really pretty girl in my 6th grade home ec class is like singing this song, and like I need to know music. I don't know what the 5th one would be. I feel like such a lame-o. I could
Millennium by Backstreet Boys?
No, I can't even. It's out there. It's somewhere. I can't place it right now.
It's in the ether.
Yeah, it's in the ether. Because I want to give a good response to this. I don't want it to just be like.
I mean, are there any albums of recent, like maybe have come out in the last 5 years that you're like, oh shit, that is so good?
Blonde by Frank Ocean.
Oh,
I think it's like a freaking incredible album. And it's a record that I will put on. That's the one I was like thinking of in my house, like Blonde by Frank Ocean. And I just love his voice. He's a similar artist. I would say he's a similar artist to Jeff Mangum, where it's like kind of reclusive, like what the hell is he talking about? But also like the songs are really good, and he only puts out like music like once every 10, 15 years, it seems like at this point. Like Frank Ocean
for a non-lyrics guy, you have some of like the deepest lyrical artists
Tell me about it
on
sometime,
your list.
Yeah. I don't know what Frank's talking about. I just put it on like the Apple Music thing where it's like, here are the lyrics of these songs. And I'm just like, oh, that's what he's saying? Cool. I was just humming and cooing along with it, like not saying the N-word. Like, so but I love Frank. I love Frank Ocean's style of his sensibility on that record. I love the artistry of Blonde being spelled the masculine and the feminine, and like having these like things that are like contradictory to each other in some ways. He's called Blonde. His hair is green on the album cover. Like green. I love that stuff. I love that sort of. So I like the whole thing. I like the way that whole record feels. That. It's like a perfect album to me.
I love that. What a fun list.
That's killer.
That's sort of like, if you're a Me Without You fan, I could like see each one of those artists in some way, shape, or form, like also being like, yeah, Me Without You person would be into each one of those artists.
Yeah, cool.
So
cool.
That totally makes sense. Love it. Mike, what do you want to plug? Obviously, it sounds like there's still Me Without You stuff potentially going on. Obviously, there's reissues. There's lots of different things still going on in the Me Without You camp. What do you want to plug?
Well, I mean, Me Without You is still like the label arm, the distribution arm is still like very much alive and well. So, but if you like Me Without You, keep going to mewithoutYou.com to like buy whatever we have there, because that still helps support the band if you like it. So yeah, we've got some stuff in the I don't know when this is going to come out.
We don't either.
That Greg podcast, and it was like he was talking about putting together a photo book, and I was like, that thing's been out for a year at this point. Like,
Yeah, we released Greg's episode out like way later
way
than
out. I was
when
like,
we
this is like
recorded
9
it.
months ago when he recorded this.
It wasn't that
Right.
much longer, was it?
It felt.
Man.
Oh yeah, it was at least a good 9 months
Yeah, it
from the
was-
time that
I
we
feel like it was a good
recorded to
9
the
months.
time
He's
that we
like,
released
The
it.
book should be shipping soon. There might still some be available online. I was like, oh my god, this was February when he recorded this.
Oofda.
Yeah, no, that's exactly when it was.
Usually we
Really?
try to be a little more evergreen than that,
Yeah.
so that's on us.
So yeah, but I mean, I think 2024. Hopefully, we've got some stuff that surprises people. We put out some, like I said, we're doing reissues. We kind of done it to death. I think we've got some plans for something new that maybe people aren't expecting in the next year. That I hope people
Love it.
dig. So
Me
just pay
Without You
attention to
movie.
Me Without You. Follow us on the only social media site I care about, the Twitter.
I'm waiting for
X.com.
the Me Without You Flowers Direct company.
Yeah,
That's
there
what
we
we
are.
need.
Oh damn it! You must have been on. We talk about this already. Yeah, we're doing flowers direct. We ship peonies straight to your home. Baby's breath is like an added $2.99. But yeah, those are the only flowers I know. Peonies and baby's breath.
Mike, what else do you want to plug?
Oh yeah.
Wink, wink.
Well, there is some big news that I'm happy you asked, by the way. This June, I'm going to space.
Space.
Actual space. Like not like exosphere, but like actual space.
I'm being put on a rocket ship. And
By like Bezos or Elon? Like by who?
By NASA.
NASA.
Yeah.
Actual NASA.
Yeah, NASA. I'm going to Cape Canaveral, and they're going to put me in a rocket, like in a spacesuit, and I'm going to be launched into space. And the point of it is I'm doing scientific research to see how close you can get to the sun.
Oh.
What are your credentials? Like why did they pick you of
I
all
filled out a
people?
survey online.
Yeah.
Is that how
They're
you
like,
got the
who
Me
has,
Without
like,
You job too?
No, I already told you that story. This one I just lucked out.
So is it just like, I mean, whoever gets closest to the sun? I mean,
it's me.
You're Icarus,
I'm there with.
so-
I'm there. So there's 5 other people who are doing it too in separate rockets,
okay.
being launched from different parts of the world, right? So one person from Seoul. I think the other one is somewhere in the continental U.S. I think it's either like in El Paso or Houston area. Like they have a new base in El Paso, and then there's one in South America, like in Chile and whatever. It's like, so they're all going off from these different points. Oh, one person is from in Alaska,
Oh.
like kind
okay.
of down there, like there's like a thing on like the Baltic Sea.
I feel like they got a
So,
head
like,
start because they're
everyone's
gonna be
getting launched
colder
out
than
from these
everybody
different
else.
points, right? To see like so they're all going to kind of like go they launch off these different trajectories to see which one can get to the sun fastest, and then who can get as close as possible, right? Who will, because the actual
Sure.
like the spaceships themselves, like the rockets, they're built to withstand. I think they can get within I'm gonna say like what do they say, like maybe like 94,000 miles from the sun, but
Wow.
like so it can, so
Jeez.
we're not gonna get that close, like we'll be dead before that, but like
But the rockets won't.
but the point is there need to be enough leeway so they can see who survives the longest, and
Yeah,
eventually
so
the
they
rocket
can
will just
monitor
disintegrate
your-
into the sun. But it is about how long can a human withstand getting close to the sun. So
Wait, so are
Does-
all of
does
you
your-
going as far as you can until you die, or
Yes.
like is at some point you're heading back?
no, well, heading back into the arms of Jesus.
Oh, that's right. Well, I bet you'd hope that each one of these people have prayed the sinner's prayer.
Yeah, exactly.
And each of these rockets are going to
They
be.
have it written up in the side of the capsule just in case you didn't, and at the last moment,
Right,
like,
deathbed
you can
confession,
oh,
just like
quick,
Darwin.
Oh shoot, I forgot to recite the sinner's prayer, and then God flicks a light switch, and then you go to heaven forever. It's great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And each of these rockets is going to be equipped with HAL 9000, correct?
That was not disclosed to me.
Oh, well, you better start learning Daisy.
Okay.
Daisy, give me your answer due. You better learn it.
Okay. Yeah, I will.
Yeah. Hopefully you get that reference.
I
don't
mean,
know.
it's Kubrick. I get it, but
Yeah.
I
Okay.
haven't-
Okay.
But
Yeah,
like,
yeah, you're good.
but 2001 is this film where I'm like, ugh, why do people like this? I love Kubrick.
Dude, I watch it.
I love. Kubrick.
I watch it 3 times a year.
I love Kubrick. Right? I love Kubrick. I want to make this very clear. But when I watched 2001, I was like, let's move this along. Let's speed things up a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. There are a lot of slow scenes. But
yeah,
it's
and it's intentional, and I like that.
Yeah.
I like that he is kind of doing something like that. But it wasn't for me.
It's like you watch it once.
To be fair, I also only watched it in probably, I don't know, 2000. Like, so I was still in high school.
What? Yeah, you got to give it another shot.
Yeah,
man.
but I'm sure I do.
With a modern perspective, especially.
Yeah.
Man, it's one of those films that just, especially since you're going to the sun.
Yeah, exactly. And it really should be required viewing. But yeah, into space, straight to the sun. Yeah.
Dude, I love it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, Mike, thank you so much for chatting about, just your history with Me Without You, and from a kind of an interesting perspective. We don't talk to a lot of managers. I'm trying to think if we've even chatted with a manager before.
Yeah.
So you've got obviously like a really interesting perspective with a band that has been one of the most important bands in my life for 20 years now. So
Cool.
I'm just like really, really grateful for your work with Me Without You, and just so excited for whatever might the hell happen in the Me Without You world in the future. I'm just really stoked for. So, thank you so much for chatting about it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. I hope your listenership doesn't decline because of this.
It'll be all right.
Not if you repost it.